Hey, everybody. Welcome to Factually. I'm Adam Conover. Thanks for joining me on the show again. I'm excited to be back in the United States. I just spent a couple weeks on the road. We had some sold-out shows in London and Amsterdam, and then Providence, Rhode Island. In between those, I took a week to just travel around Europe. I was in Amsterdam for an extra week. I went to Prague. I ate a lot of really good food. I stared at some rivers. I rode a bike. And then every so often, I would get a ping on my phone about something batshit crazy happening in America. Very difficult to be mentally out of America right now when America is traumatizing the rest of the world with these insane tariffs that have been put on, with the fact that people are being disappeared from our streets and sent to El Salvadorian prisons. Shit is crazy in the United States, and that is apparent everywhere in the world. People all over the world are asking, what the fuck is happening in America? And so I'm back in America to talk to you guys about it. I've got a really great episode for you this week that I think we're going to get into some of the deeper political dynamics that are driving what's going on in this country. Because look, it's easy to look at what's happening in this country and say that there's a problem with Americans, right? That the American people are the issue. But I actually think the problem is that our political system distorts our sense of who Americans are. Take the Electoral College, right? You learned about the Electoral College in school. All the electors from a given state are awarded to the presidential candidate who gets the most votes. That means that the votes of everyone who voted against that person are basically thrown out within that state. And that creates the illusion of uniformity. It creates the illusion that we have red states and blue states, where everyone in that state either is Republican or Democrat. And in our age of political polarization, the media endlessly amplifies that distinction as if people from different states are simply coming from different species. The reality, though, of who the American people are is way more dynamic than what is portrayed in the media. Look, nearly 5 million people voted for Kamala Harris in Texas, and over 6 million voted for Trump in California. We do not have red states and blue states. We have purple states full of different people from all walks of life who have different opinions. America is a big fucking place with tons of different political opinions within it. And when we forget about that massive political diversity, we neglect the real political possibilities in this country. We act as though big things are not possible when in fact they are. There is a huge amount of political potential for a new America just lying in wait for us to activate it across the country. And my guest today demonstrates that in a way that I find really compelling. I know you're going to love this conversation. Before we get into it, I want to remind you that I am on tour. I'm continuously on tour, even though I'm back from Europe. Coming soon, April 16th through 17th, I'll be in Vancouver, Canada. We sold out the show on the 17th, but we added a new one on the 16th, so get tickets to that. April 18th and 19th, I'm doing shows in Eugene at Olson's Run Comedy Club. We've sold out a couple of those too, but there's tickets still available. May 9th through 11th, I'll be in Charleston, South Carolina. Can't wait for that. And then we are adding new dates. Check them out. We got dates in Oklahoma and more coming all the time. Head to adamconover.net for all those tickets. And of course, if you want to support the channel directly, head to patreon.com/adamconover. $5 a month gets you every episode of this podcast and my monologue ad-free. We have an awesome online community. We'd love to have you. Patreon.com/adamconover. Now, let's get to this week's interview. Today, I'm talking with Trae Crowder. I love this man. He is also known professionally as the Liberal Redneck, and he's a comedian and commentator from Tennessee. You've probably heard his stand-up comedy. You might have seen his YouTube videos, which go viral all the time. This dude is so sharp and funny, and he contradicts so many of the narratives that we are fed of what Americans are like and just the way things work in this country with the nonstop barrage of fascist awfulness coming through the news. It seemed like a great time to have him on the show to talk about what he thinks about this country and what we can do to change it going forward. Please welcome Trae Crowder. Trae, thanks so much for being here, man.
Yeah, good to see you, buddy. Glad to be here.
We met like a couple months back or last year in New York, but I've been following you for a while.
Mm-hmm.
You've been doing this stuff on YouTube, the Liberal Redneck, for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
You're a liberal guy from the South. Where do your politics come from?
What I've always mostly chalked it, well, the more elaborate answer I usually give is that I was raised by my a single father, and my dad, who has since passed away, he had one sibling, my Uncle Tim, and my Uncle Tim is an openly gay man.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, and I've known that my whole life, like, since I knew what being gay was, like, that he's been out since before I was even born.
Yeah.
And him and my dad were very close. So I always thought that was sort of at least part of the reason why I didn't go to, my dad didn't send us to church. Like, I didn't grow up in church or anything like that. And he just grew up. My dad was also, he was kind of like a long-haired sort of rock and roll, like dope smoking redneck kind of guy who loved like David Bowie and David Lynch movies and shit like that, and was into, you know, more weird for where we were. This is rural Tennessee, Salina, Tennessee, by the way, like tiny little town. So that was all kind of odd. I mean, he liked Skinner too, but he liked this other shit also. And he had this gay brother who he loved, and we didn't go to church or anything. And I've just always sort of chalked it up to that. But I also think, put more simply, I'm just kind of really, even though it happened in a weird place for this to happen, I'm just kind of the way I was raised to be. Because, like, most of the other rural Southern liberals I know, and I do know a lot because I'm one, so, you know, birds of a feather and whatnot.
Yeah.
My wife is one, some of my best friends. Almost all the other ones are blue sheep in their family, you know? Like you know, like they're the weirdo, you know, standout one that's different from everybody else. Mm-hmm. But for me, it wasn't really like my sisters like this too. My dad, they were like a family of like Southern Democrats, and like my dad's dad, my grandpa, I do mean Southern Democrat in the traditional sense, which is to say, like, yeah, he was also racist, but he was like a Democrat, you know, his whole life. He was, you know, not like robe wearing racist, just like casually racist.
I mean, the Democrats at one point were the party of the robe wearing racists.
I know. That's why I feel the need to clarify that my grandpa didn't have the robe. I'm just saying he would just casually bandy about slurs and things like that.
Yeah.
But was like a lifelong Democrat, and so was my dad. And like my grandpa died in 2004, but my dad like hated George W. Bush, you know, like with a fervor. And so like I'm just kind of, you know, like I said, just kind of the way I was raised to be.
But how unusual do you feel that? I mean, you literally built a comedy brand around it, right? Around being it like a unique thing.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Sometimes we like overinflate how politically divided the country is, right? Because like so many states are actually just 60-40, right? Like California is like 60-40.
I talk about that. I like to point that out a lot because yes, it's like, right. 60-40, right. The blue, like California, there's a whole lot of people who voted for Trump out here, a whole lot of MAGA people. Yeah. And in Tennessee, there's a lot of people who can't stand Trump, and that is true. But I have also found generally the more like urban-rural divide, though, is pretty universal. You know what I mean? Like a lot of those more MAGA-y parts of California are the more rural parts. And it's same in Tennessee, like Nashville's, you know, very liberal and everything, and so is Memphis and wherever else. But then like the hinterlands, you know, are generally not a lot of times. And I'm from there. I'm from the middle of nowhere. So it was still like we were definitely, like I definitely was that kind of weirdo kid in school and everything. Even though I at the same time, I still had plenty of friends and still do who agree with me. I say plenty. There's like, it's like 5 of us. You know what I mean? But my school was tiny, you know, like there was probably 50 or 60 kids in my graduating class, which is the biggest one they've ever had there. Normally a graduating class at my school was like 30 to 40 or something. So, you know, 5's not that bad, but it's still like very, very much a minority, and it's gotten much worse and more divided in places like my hometown since I left there at 18.
Why is that?
Well, I mean, you know, in 2016 when Trump was running, I had this whole thing. I was like somewhat sympathetic to it. I could understand how it had happened because I mentioned earlier my grandpa's a lifelong Southern Democrat. That's true, but I have a very vivid memory of my grandpa. It would have been in like 97 or 8 or something like that. Like NAFTA had passed. My town is very small. The beating heart of the town's economy was this big clothing factory, Oshkosh B'gosh, which in a very small town employed like 250 people. So like, literally everyone either worked there or they worked at a place that like sold stuff to the people that worked there. Like my dad ran the video store in I grew up in like a 90s video store.
Yep.
That was very cool. And my grandpa had a car lot, and my gay uncle and his partner had a deli on the town square. And my maternal grandmother had a country diner, little restaurant,
And all the
stuff.
people at the Oshkosh Bagosh factory eating the deli and the diner.
And they rent movies for my dad and get cars for my grandpa and all that stuff. And then that factory left in the mid 90s and in like 96 or 97. And it just utterly decimated my hometown. And it's to this day never really recovered. But I remember the vivid memory I have is sometime in that time frame, mid to late 90s. I don't remember exactly. I was sitting at the counter in my dad's grocery store and I'm like 11 or 12. And I remember my grandpa storming in holding a newspaper, and he throws the newspaper on the counter and he says, "I'll never vote for another Democrat as long as I live."
Wow.
And so I think that just kind of sums up the general thing that happened there. Like, because that county, despite everything I just said about a minute ago, that county up until around really like even in 2000, my tiny little rural county in Tennessee was a blue county. Like it went for Al Gore in 2000. Bush in 2004, and has been more, a deepening shade of red ever since. And I think that's a big part of the reason why. So in 2016, when Trump was like actually playing into all that, talking about all that type of stuff, people were very open to it. Now, even then, my whole thing was like, okay, I hear you, but he's so clearly full of shit, though. Like, I get why that appeals to you, and you do have. That's the things. Like, I'm very sympathetic to like the plight. They have legitimate grievances. Like people in town, like they didn't do anything to deserve what happened to them. Like my town, because it wasn't just that the jobs left forever, and the pills showed up for good at like the exact same time, like OxyContin and opioids and all that. That those two things happened in concert with one another in the mid to late 90s in like the rural South, and it just, destroyed that community, but all communities like it. And so, again, I get why they're mad and upset and everything. But even in 2016, I was like, okay, but that he isn't going to do anything about it though. But then he won, and I was like, well, he conned a lot of people. And then this time around, I'm just like, I don't know what anybody expected. You know what I mean? Like he had a chance to follow through on things and didn't, and then got elected again. And now, like as we're sitting here recording this, like the, global economy's crashing and all that stuff. And
stock market's down 20% right now.
And I see like money people, like business Republicans. I've seen a bunch of them get shared around on Twitter today in a kind of point and laughy way where they're saying like, look, I got to say, I did not expect this. Like I thought economic reasonability would be at the core of everything. I really did. But it's like, I feel like the implication of that is like, look, I knew they were going to strip people's civil rights away and, round people into camps. I knew that, but I thought the economy would be good.
Well, they thought that he was going to keep on, because in the first term he had Stephen Mnuchin in there.
Yeah.
And that guy was just sort of a normal, like the economic policy was just normal. Trump didn't do much with it. And that's probably what they all expected was, okay, he'll send a bunch of barbers to El Salvador and their families will cry.
But that's fine as long as the market is
he'll keep the economy doing normal.
But the second part, yes, that, which I feel like makes you're outing yourself as an asshole when you say like, that's cool with me. But also B, I don't even understand that part because it's like he was talking about tariffs and everything the whole time. Like all these people keep saying like, I just can't believe he's doing this. It's like, he said he was going to.
Yeah, and all the economists were like, this is crazy, so crazy that nobody thought he would actually do it. But it does speak to when you say what changed your town, which was free trade. And by the way, the interesting thing about that is your grandfather saying, I'd never vote for another Democrat again. A Republican would also have passed NAFTA.
Yeah, right.
Like Clinton was being Republican-y.
For sure.
From a Democrat perspective.
That's 100% true, but he still just got...
He was the one who did it.
Blamed for it. And that whole and it was, in 2016, obviously he's running against Hillary. So it's like, it's not just Democrats. It's like Clinton specifically to a lot of these people are just, they just...
Well, and it's funny that, a Republican, Trump ran as a Republican. He was the first one to run against that free trade regime explicitly. Bernie did too, to an extent. But the tariffs that he's putting in place are through a lens, him doing what he said he was going to do and him responding to that anger that your community felt of it's protectionism. It won't actually bring the factory back.
Right. But that's ostensibly that's supposed to be part of the argument, right?
Yeah.
Yes, that's true. But again, it's like with so many things with him, it's like, okay, but but it won't though. Or like, you know what I mean? Like it isn't.
And it's just going to make everything more expensive.
It's just a tax on, working class and middle class people, just a big sales tax for everybody. Yeah. And, so
you're still going to be buying Oshkosh Bagash from China. It's just going to be more expensive, or from Bangladesh or wherever.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know. It's been a wild trip. Cause also it's just, when I said in 2016, when I was sympathetic to where they were coming from, but I couldn't understand it with Trump specifically. It's because like another thing I know, because it's like, he didn't come out of nowhere. He's been famous for being a rich douchebag my entire life.
Yeah.
So like, I know he was a known quantity, and I know that before he got into politics, he represented like one of the worst types of people that a person could be to people in my hometown.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's like a silver spoon, blue blood, big city Yankee who thinks he's better than everybody else, and like, is pompous and needs his ass whipped and all that stuff. Like, it's just, just could not, and still kind of cannot believe that he in particular is the champion, but I guess I underestimated the whole like dumb bully part of it or whatever,
Well, he was able to channel a certain kind of rage, like deep American conservative skeptical, free trade skeptical rage. But is there, what, do you have any idea what it is that allowed him to make that cultural flip? Because it is one of the most remarkable things about him, that he started out as, literally an asshole real estate developer from New York,
right?
Who could be more hated,
right?
But like, what is it that made him culturally appealing to folks you grew up with? Is there
that whole? It's kind of like what I said a minute ago, the dumb bully part. I think, like, meaning like, the whole thing was like he tells it like it. He was very different, right, in the like national political sphere than anybody had been before, just in terms of temperament and the way he talked and everything. And it just like, he talked shit and he made fun of people and all that. And I mean, and he was like, there's the racism part and all the other stuff that like, and it just the xenophobia and everything that's like inherent in it. But that whole drain the swamp, tells it like it is type thing, because they definitely, even though he had been that guy forever, the politicians in Washington were like the ultimate, they look down their noses at us and fuck us over at every turn type of person. And so him being like talking about sticking it to them and draining the swamp and all that, that's the best answer that I've got. I still think that it's wild. Like, even like trying to rationalize it that way, all these years later, I still am kind of confounded by it, but that's like all I can really come up with.
I keep saying I'm in my busy season, but honestly, I think I'm just always busy now. With so much on my plate, podcasts, stand-up, touring, I'm constantly tempted to cut corners, and grocery shopping for healthy meals is usually one of the first things to go, right? That's why I love Hungry Root. Hungry Root is like having your own personal shopper and nutritionist rolled into one. They take care of the grocery shopping and recommend nutritious meals tailored to your tastes, dietary preferences, and health goals. It really does make shopping, planning, and cooking feel simple and stress-free. Just share your goals and preferences, and they'll fill your cart with smart recommendations, getting better each week as they learn what you liked and what you didn't. Plus, Hungry Root only stocks high-quality food. You won't find high fructose corn syrup, artificial sweeteners, or preservatives in anything they offer, and all their meat and seafood is free from hormones and antibiotics. I love Hungry Root. If you want to give them a try, take advantage of this exclusive offer. For a limited time, you can get 40% off your first box, plus get a free item in every box for life. Go to hungryroot.com/factually and use code factually. That's hungryroot.com/factually, code factually to get 40% off your first box and a free item of your choice for life. hungryroot.com/factually, code factually. Have you ever Googled yourself and found your phone number, home address, and even your family members' names just out there? That's not just a glitch. It's data brokers. These are companies that collect and sell your personal information online without you even knowing it. And beyond just feeling creepy, it's dangerous. If you've ever shared strong political opinions online, had a public-facing job, or just existed on the internet, you could be putting a target on your back. Data brokers make it easy for bad actors to harass, stalk, or even steal your identity. And you know what? I have had it happen to me. And that is why I now use Delete Me. Their team works to remove your personal data from these sites, and they keep doing it all year long. It is the easiest way I have found to take back some privacy in a world that makes it feel impossible. I can tell you from my firsthand experience, it really works. And get this, you can get 20% off your Delete Me plan when you go to joindeleteme.com/Adam and use promo code Adam at checkout. That's joindeleteme.com/Adam, promo code Adam. What do you think that, I mean, you tour a lot. I assume that like a lot of coastal liberals love you because you're like, oh, you're one of the people who normally hates me, but we agree about stuff.
Yeah. It's like a novelty sort of.
Yeah. You know? I mean, what is that like for you? Do you feel that there's shit that they misunderstand about, folks where you're from or about you?
I mean, yeah, and again, like glad to have most of them actually are really cool, but like, yes, they do say weird shit sometimes. Like from the beginning, it was things like, you kind of alluded to it earlier, but things like, oh, you're like saying a unicorn. You know what I mean? Like that type of thing. Like literally those words sometimes. But like just the idea that I'm the only thing, I'm not supposed to exist. I'm the only one that exists. That there's no one else like me or whatever. And
that's inherent in the name, the Liberal Redneck. You are highlighting that a little bit and making it sound unusual. But when someone says that to your face, it's like a little insulting.
Well, but it's also, I mean, I can't deny what you just said is true, but it also is just those two words just like describe me and who I am and where I'm from.
Yeah.
And I just put the two words together and it worked because people were like, oh, that's not a thing or whatever.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
But for me,
like,
it is
who I am is a novelty to these people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. Because it's like, it is like kind of a gimmick, but it also is just, it is just who I am, Yeah. Like they also, a lot of times they think, some of them who think they're being particularly shrewd think that it's like some kind of like a character or that the accent is fake or something like that. Like I've gotten that a lot, especially out here because in LA too, there's another element of like some people who don't even know who I am will think the accent is fake because they think I'm like an actor or something.
Your accent's too good.
Yeah.
And it's like when I go back to New York and I meet like someone from Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, and they have a perfect Brooklyn accent. And you're just like, it sounds too good to be real.
Right. Yeah.
Like it has that same effect.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So I get that a lot. And then also, and people, people, I talk about it sometimes on stage, but like I say that sometimes I say out here when I'm doing shows in LA, because this is where I live, but that these coastal people, that sometimes they talk to me like I'm a North Korean defector. You know what I mean? Who like somehow made it across the DMZ. Yeah, exactly. Well, literally, I say, which is true. I've literally had people ask me like, "You're from the rural South. How did you get out?" Right?
Yeah.
And the joke I say is like, "Well, first I had to bribe a riverboat captain." But yeah, like that type of thing. I've had people ask me like how I got to college or made it to college and that type of shit. And of course, it's the same way anybody did.
Well,
I did good in school and applied.
But I do think there's like sort of an unacknowledged divide, like you said, rural, urban. I also think there's like a divide in America of people who leave their hometowns versus people who don't. Like my mom
that's definitely
was
true.
The only member of her four brothers and sisters to like leave and move somewhere else. Everybody else lives in the hometown. And like we get along great. But when we go visit, and I hang out with my aunts and uncles and cousins who like live in the same town as their grandparents grew up.
Yeah.
And my side of the family is like all over the country. You know what I mean? It's
right.
It's a different life experience.
Very much. Yeah, most small towns are like that. You either like I said, like I did, you leave at 18, you like grow up.
Yep.
Dreaming of leaving, the moment I can leave, I'm leaving.
Yeah.
Or you like stay there forever or in the general like vicinity forever. And it's like my wife, she's from a different small town in Tennessee, but culturally it's the same place. It's like 4 hours away on the other end of the state, but it's basically the exact same place called Waynesboro. And we live out here with our two sons, but she's from a huge family, and every single other member of her family lives within a like 5-mile radius of each other in Wayne County, Tennessee. And again, they're great too. Get along great with them, but we're definitely the, like the weird ones, the odd ones that like we come back for holidays and stuff. And, one of my sons is a vegetarian and the other one's got long hair and all that shit. And it's weird to them. But again, we could be, and in fact, we were before we moved out here, like living in Knoxville, like Tennessee, a city 4 hours away, even though it's a southern state, it's the same state. still was kind of like that. Cause it's like you said, it's just that itself is like a dividing line. You know, you think you're like fancy or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, my grandparents. My mom was the first step she took was she didn't go to the college in her hometown. Instead, she grew up in the UP of Michigan, and instead of going to college there, she went to Ann Arbor in the lower
Regular
peninsula.
Michigan.
Yeah, regular
right.
Michigan.
Yeah, right.
She just went to the state university.
Yeah, right.
And her parents didn't want her to. They were like, "You want to go?
Yeah, right.
You want to go to the state? Oh, wow, who are you?" Kind of a little bit of that vibe.
No, yeah. Definitely a very, very real thing. And yeah, it is kind of tied to the like, I don't know, political and cultural divide and stuff.
Yeah, I've always wondered what that is that makes some people go, "I'm getting out of here," and how that is tied to.
Well, using me as an example, like, and again, I said I got a bunch of friends who are from similar backgrounds as me, which is true. Most of them, like two of the other guys are comedians. My wife lives with me out here, and it's like, we're also all the people that leave.
Yeah.
And I think they're tied together because if you grow up being this way in that place, like I did, you want to leave, you know, because I've been a man without a country my whole life. Cause like I never fit in my hometown, you know, I had great friends. Some of whom are still like my very best friends, but like overall I didn't fit in that town. And I was like a weirdo and stood out for sure, you know, but I moved to Southern California and I definitely don't fit in out here either. So it's like, but your sensibility, like, it's you know, like a cause and effect type thing or chicken and egg type thing. You know what I mean? Like people there's a connection there because those are the people that leave, the people that leave and the people that are more open-minded or however you want to put it tend to be the same people.
Yeah. Like, let's drill down on that a little bit. You said the people who are this way,
right?
You don't just mean like, oh, liberal, like not, you know, didn't vote for Trump or whatever. There's like some personality traits, some like frame of mind, some perspective, open-mindedness, something.
Again, that's the type of saying open-minded is the type of thing that people in my hometown will hear and be like, you know,
that's condescending.
Yeah, exactly. And I get that, but I don't know how else to put it. Just having even an interest in going elsewhere and seeing other things, like a curiosity, if that's, that's probably all, that's all. I don't know how to say it in a way that isn't condescending. People like, people are satisfied. They're like, this is where my life is, where my family is, and I love it here. And it's like, I love my hometown too. It's not that, it's just, but there's not an interest in like, you know, like I could not believe we got my in-laws to come visit us here last summer, but we did. Right. But my wife was always like, oh no, my mom maybe, but not my dad. And again, they're not hardcore Trumpers or nothing. They're just like very small town sensibility type people. And then when they come out here, it's like, you know, suggesting like sushi or something, you know, forget it. Like that's not going to happen.
What did you do with them? What did they enjoy? What did they not enjoy?
Well, we just bought a house last year. So my father-in-law mostly just like did house shit, like, you know what I mean? Found like jobs to do and stuff. Yeah. And my mother-in-law, like they went to Disneyland with my sons and that sort of thing, you know, and, but yeah, it's just, there's
you
just
didn't
not,
go to the Grove and get,
it's a sense of like that, all that ain't for me, I guess. And also again, now it's a sense of like, and the people who live there, like, they don't like me. They think I'm stupid. They kind of, you know, and I don't like them either for this. And so I don't want anything to do with all that. And also like people are afraid of cities, and it's not just like a racism thing or an immigrant thing or whatever. It's literally just cities are scary.
Yeah.
You know, like my Meemaw, who passed away last year, but she fucking hated Donald Trump. She was so like terrified of me. I live in Burbank, right?
Yeah.
And when I talked to her on the phone, she would be like worried I was going to get like mugged at the grocery store or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you mean the Whole Foods in Burbank, you know, like, but she doesn't know what any of that means. It's just like a big, scary place.
I mean,
know?
a lot of the news elsewhere in the country is just constantly playing Los Angeles is dangerous, Chicago is dangerous, New York is dangerous, like this endless stream. But that only works because it feeds into sort of a deeper belief that people have that those places are like fundamentally terrifying and like unsafe.
Yeah, and even me, I'm, you know, again, I'm one of the weirdo the ones who left, very much so. But like even me, like I don't like, I love New York, but I've never lived in New York, and if I'm in New York for more than like 5 days or a week or so, like I start to kind of get overwhelmed by it a little bit because it's a lot. Like I live in the Valley, and the Valley's very like suburban.
Yes.
Like LA is a huge sprawling city, but it doesn't. That part of it especially does not feel like
It's low key up there.
an urban metropolis or whatever. But like New York very much does.
Yeah.
And I love that for a change of pace for a few days. But after, like I said, a few days, it starts to like stress me out.
Yeah.
You know?
I love New York, and I want to go back there and spend more time there. But I do think if I lived there again, like I did for 10 years in my 20s, like 365 days a year, it would be a little too much for me. I like going and coming back and like being in a slightly more relaxed atmosphere. But yeah, you're putting in mind to me, I read like a study years ago, or at least this is the thing that I've heard, that like one of the main personality traits differences between liberals and conservatives is like liberals really seek novelty or really highly value novelty, new things they've never done before. And like conservatives generally don't, not every single person, but that you can see that culturally. At least that makes sense.
Yeah, right. No. The dumb way that me and my other liberal Southern buddies put, we have a saying kind of for that where we say, same hits, different don't hit is what we say for these people.
Yeah.
We use the word hits to mean something is good. But anyway, just like same good, different bad, basically is like the general philosophy of a lot of people in towns like ours,
When you're touring, who are you drawing? Because you say you feel like a man without a country, right? Like you're not like totally aligned with anybody. Are you getting both conservatives or liberals? Are you mostly getting liberals? No.
Liberals, yeah. I say man without a country, I mean more like culturally. Like I said, it's just like out here. Like I was the most, even though I wasn't California-y at all, and they wouldn't have termed it that way, I was the most California-y type person in my hometown, which is like, like I like fuck, I read books for fun, and I like Eddie Izzard and shit. But also I wasn't Christian. I didn't go to church, and I was openly skeptical of it all, which was like blasphemous. So like, this is also the land of godless heathens and everything. And so like, I was the most, I guess, would-be coastal type person in my hometown, but I'm like the most rednecky person in my neighborhood in Burbank or whatever, Yeah. So none of that even has anything to do with like politics. But at my shows, it's almost entirely liberals. Sometimes they drag a, conservative spouse with them when it's one of those couples, so like it's not completely bereft of any conservatives, but usually it's a conservative who's in a relationship with a liberal, so they're by nature more,
Are you,
I guess, open to
Are
it.
you able to speak to those people? Because when I'm on the road, I tour all over, and people, it's mostly I get a liberal crowd, but not everybody. And like my favorite compliment I'll get occasionally is someone saying like, I don't agree with everything you say, but I like your show. Yeah, it was funny, and you had some good points.
Yes,
and, and I talk shit about everybody. So like, do you get that?
Yeah, I get that. That's also one of my favorite compliments to give. Those aforementioned, conservative husbands or whatever. I've gotten that a lot from when they said like, I don't agree with it, but I did think it was funny. And like you said, it's like, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, that's like the best you can hope for. But also, like you said, I just to be clear, like I do. Because I know what my crowd is and I know what my internet thing is. So I do like, I talk about politics, but not entirely and not even really the majority of it. I would say that most of it is like, just regular stand up from the perspective of someone like me. So like I talk about living in California a lot, or I have I have middle school sons. I talk about that. I talk, I don't, but when I do talk about politics, which I'd say is maybe 10, 15% of my act is political, when I do talk about it, it's very clearly from a leftist perspective. So it's like, the people in the crowd are not going to miss that.
But one of the nice things about stand-up is, you can't talk about politics too much in stand-up because people want some of it, and then they want you to move on. They want to taste.
That's exactly how I approach it, yeah.
Especially right now. Crowds want like a little bit of relief. They want someone to make a joke so they can laugh about it, and then they want to forget about it.
Yes.
But if you do both, then the crowd, like they know you. They're like, okay, I've heard about this guy's kids. I understand his perspective. He thinks a little differently from me, but I believe that he's a thoughtful, good person who's thinking through it. And then they can maybe laugh at your perspective, even if they don't entirely agree with it, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I have basically the exact same philosophy about it. And I've had people tell me, fans of, like hardcore fans of mine who are very, very into politics, very liberal, have said to me a version of like, I was worried that you were going to be talking about nothing but politics tonight, and I'm glad you didn't because it's just, I mean, it's exhausting. Like it's a lot, but then I've got a big chunk right now about schools because again, I have sons and they go to school here, and so like in politics, there's been a big narrative. People have talked about schools a lot in recent years, like public schools, right?
Yeah.
And about them being like woke, right? And like letting kids identify as cats and giving them litter boxes and all that crazy shit.
Yeah.
And I don't even get into specifics of all that, but I talk about the idea of public schools being woke is funny to me because I went to a public school in the rural South and it couldn't have been less of a woke place. And then I just talk about my school for a while. And so it's just me talking about the school I went to, but it's framed in a whatever social commentary type of way or something. And then I talk about my son's school in the Valley and how it is kind of woke, right? And I make fun of it a little bit too. So it's like, that is all like politics adjacent, but it's not. When I say 10, 15% politics, usually I'm talking like what, we're talking about the Trump and the shit going on with it. And then, but I also have things that it's like, I feel like if you like me specifically for the politics, it can like scratch that itch. But if you don't care about that, you won't even necessarily think to yourself that it's a political thing.
But all those issues are political in a deeper way. You don't need to specifically talk about Trump or the Republicans and Democrats, but you're talking about like America and our fucking problems and et cetera.
Right. But see, that's the exact, because to me, all my favorite comedians were always people who like talked about shit, social commentators, that type of thing. Even before I was known for being the liberal redneck or any of that, that was still the type of stand-up that I liked and wanted to do. But I didn't think of myself as a political comedian, though, despite talking about things, like as an unknown comic in the South, I come up in Tennessee and Georgia and all that, and I would do, anti-Confederate flag or jokes or make fun of the Bible or pro-gay or anti-racism and all this type of stuff that I didn't think of as being political. It was like, I was talking about real shit, and I was like, I knew it was like edgy for some of those places or whatnot, but I didn't think of myself as like a political comedian. And so now I don't know exactly how to verbalize what I think. I think the more like straight up ripped from the headlines, like more topical type of stuff, I think of that as like political comedy.
Yep.
And then the other stuff like the shit with the schools, I think of more as like social commentary or whatever. Because of the climate of everything, some people might look at that and say that it's like political, but I would not have described it as such before. Like I'll talk about that shit in front of any general audience. Do you know what I'm saying? And so I don't know. I don't know exactly how to divvy it.
No, I know what you mean. It's like I open my act right now by talking about like literal current events for like 10 minutes.
That's me. It sounds like we do the same.
And then I start talking about
the
sex
shows
and
are very
dating.
different because of who we are, but so far, we have the same approach.
Yeah.
It sounds like, because that's what I do too.
Well, I do, and then I do a lot of stuff about sex and about like, men being sexually repressed and all this shit. I'm like, when I think deeply about it, I'm like, it's political, or at least it's social. It like has to do with the politics of the country. But like, really, I'm talking about fucking and coming and like, that kind of thing. That's like my deeper perspective. Like that's the thing that's more interesting to me to talk about than even tariffs or whatever, right?
Oh no, for sure. Yeah. Well, it's also, I mean, yes, I agree with that, but also it's just, I feel like it's not practical to expect or want to do like a full act of the first 10 minutes of what you do or whatever.
Yeah.
It doesn't have a shelf life. Like, do you know what I mean? Like it's always changing, and it's just not, I wouldn't want to do it regardless, but also it just isn't even a practical approach. You have to get into the more broader and deeper perspective topics, like you said, that hopefully also sort of strike some of those same chords or whatnot.
Yeah, you have to talk about people's actual lives and your own life.
Right.
I'm curious just to talk about education, though. Like, Trump's trying to disband the Department of Education. Sometimes it seems like conservatives or the right-wing movement like literally does not want people to be educated.
Right. I know. And that's part of the idea. I get into a little bit of this like on stage, but it like drilling more into the topic, it's wild to me that the attack on public education, that like people who like Trump in my hometown, that they're on board with that or that they're okay with that. Because what I talk about on stage is like, in towns like mine, this is literally true. There's every generation of every family goes to the same public school.
Yeah.
and has the same teachers oftentimes for, like decades or whatever. Like I had teachers that my dad had, right? And like there's friends of mine, they have kids in school, they have teachers that we had, And so I just can't believe, and the school in towns like mine, the school is like a real institution. Like, you know what I mean? Like people, there's pride. They have parades and ball games and pep rallies and bake sales and all this stuff. And it's like, nobody has a problem with the school. Everybody loves the public school.
Yeah.
And they certainly want their kids to go to it.
They don't want $4 million taken away from the public school or whatever.
No. And so when the broader like attack on public education itself happens and they support it, I can't really wrap my head around that. Cause it's like it's like with a lot of things with them, in my opinion, they don't ever think about it being, their school or their kid or their whatever.
Right.
It's all the other, right? You know what I mean? It's all like whatever, the bad public schools, which are, I guess, the ones in like Denver or wherever the hell they are, Minneapolis, but not their public school. But it's like, well, if they are successful in what they're doing, it's going to affect yours too. And then what? And I don't know what they expect or if they ever get that far.
The attack on universities and even like medical research is the same way. Because if you look at like mid-sized towns throughout the country, like what's the biggest employer? It's the university. It's the university football team that everybody loves. And it's the university hospital that is treating people and is like doing research and shit. And like, that's what they're defunding right now is like this is like this engine for so many.
Well, you're 100% right about the economic impact of it. But so the college part is a little, I don't know anybody in towns. Like, I don't care how much they love Trump. If they have kids, they want their kid to go to school, like, to like Clay County High School. They want them to like, learn, reading, writing, and arithmetic and all that good stuff. But like colleges can be a different story.
Okay.
There's a lot of working class people that are like, now again, my family, I was the first person in my family to ever go to college. And I was like, it was never, I mean, I'm a comedian. It doesn't matter that I went to college, but it was like never left up.
Can be helpful.
Well, but no,
help you think through things.
I would never change anything. I loved my time in college and it's one of my favorite parts of my life. Like it was great, but like, my family was always like my grandpa, the guy I was talking about earlier, it was always like, you are going to college, like no matter what, like you don't have an option not to. And again, I'm glad I did. So it's not universal, but there are definitely families in places like mine who just don't really have much use for college because they think of college as being, even though they all got a doctor or whatever, like generally speaking, college is, what's it like good for to a lot of them? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like a blue collar working class person. And that's where people go to learn, all the commie gay shit that's ruining the country or whatever. So
it's true, but
part of that.
It does also strike me though, like, and I say this as a guy who grew up in the Northeast, right? Mm-hmm. But in the Northeast, like all the sports teams that everyone rooted for were the pro sports teams. That's what we had in like New York, right?
Yeah.
With like the Knicks and the Yankees and all of that. And when I think of like who people are just what sports team they're rooting for in more conservative areas, they're much more often fans of like a college team, right? A university team.
Yeah.
Like out west or down south.
My oldest son's middle name is Neyland, which is the name of the stadium where the Tennessee Volunteers play football. It's also the name of the coach. It doesn't matter. But anyway, it's like I'm a big sports guy. I'm wearing a Memphis Grizzlies shirt right now. But like I love the Grizzlies, the Titans, whatever. But like if you gave me the ability to give just one of my teams a championship, it would be the Tennessee Vols football team.
Yeah.
Like without a doubt. Like that's the one that's like I bleed orange and at people, and I went to Tennessee Tech. I didn't go to University of Tennessee, but I've been a Tennessee Vols fan since I was 3, 4, it was way before you ever even get to college. So you're 100% right. It's so weird you bring this up because literally just yesterday, I don't even remember what made me think of this guy. I was thinking about this dude who, when I lived in Knoxville, it's where my day job used to be when that's where I started stand-up at and everything. And I lived there before I moved here. When I was living in Knoxville, I used to listen to sports radio, Tennessee Volunteer Sports Radio. And they'd have call-ins. We all know like the terrestrial radio sports call-in crowd, not a beacon of like, local intellectuality or anything like that.
Hey, they got a lot of energy.
Yeah. But they had a bunch of regulars. They had one regular in particular who called in a lot. And like, I was just thinking about him yesterday because it's like, he diehard Tennessee Vols fan, and every time he called in, he would talk shit about the university, like the college part of the university and the professors there. Like he literally be like, "Oh, them liberal professors down there they're trying to ruin the football program or something." But like complete separation in his mind. Like he would happily just like Thanos snap the college part of the university completely away. But if anything happened to the football program, it would be catastrophic. But it's like he doesn't realize that they're the
same thing.
That they're the same like entity. Yeah, it's the university, but he doesn't look at it that way. Like the football team is separate from the college part. When the football team's good and the college part's bad. And I'm not saying everybody's like that, but like there are dudes like that, and they completely oblivious to how nonsensical that is.
I mean, the reason college sports, I believe, grew up in the U.S. is partially because that was like some of the main institutions in those places in America, right? Like in a lot of parts of the country, it's like there isn't that much big business, there isn't that much, urbanization. Well, there's a university. Okay, great. Those people can play some sports. They have the capacity to build a stadium. We can go. It's
even just the sports part. It's less so now, especially in football and everything. But even like you look at baseball, like in the South for a long time, there weren't a lot of pro sports franchises in most of the southern states. Like even like in my lifetime, the Titans and the Carolina Panthers and the Jacksonville Jaguars and all that. Like, and with baseball, it's just the Atlanta Braves outside of the Florida teams. It's just the Braves. And so like a lot of these places like Alabama, and now look, obviously part of it for them is that they're like, it pains me to say the best ever, but at college football, but they don't, there's nothing else. There's not really anything else in Alabama, to root, like a source of regional pride like that or whatever.
Yeah.
But the college football team was good. And so and then by extension, when the basketball team's good, they root for them too. But it's like, Nick Saban's like a deity in Alabama. So, but there just there's not a lot of others. And I find my Northeastern friends and stuff, if they're big into sports, it's usually some, pro sports franchise. They're not that big into college stuff for the most part, except for
I mean, it's not a part of the culture. My dad grew up in Florida in the South, and he followed all the university teams growing up. And then he, when we were growing up in New York, it was all pro sports because those were the teams that had life and vitality to them.
Right.
But the point you make about how like that guy who was calling on the radio show is compartmentalizing.
Right, yeah.
I just like the team. I hate the university.
Mm-hmm.
And if something bad happens to the university, it won't affect my team.
Right.
If something bad happens to someone else's school, it won't affect my school.
Right.
It feels like the whole country's been doing that, especially with who like Trump is taking retribution on.
Of course.
Oh, the tariffs will make other people pay more, but not make me pay more, etc.
Yeah. Well,
do you think that's finally going to...
I don't know.
People feel the effects?
I don't know. I'd like to think so eventually, but it's like, there's a whole, it's that very popular subreddit, leopards ate my face, that one, right?
Yeah.
It's like, but it's like, that's kind of the premise of that whole thing. It's like, I didn't think the leopards would eat my face, says person who voted for the leopards eating faces party.
Yep.
And it's like, that's what they do all the time. And as far as it finally getting through, it's like, I'd like to, I feel like if it keeps going in the direction it's been going, it affects more and more people, like negatively enough, like if things get bad enough for enough people, you'd like to think that surely it would have to have an effect. I think there's a certain subset of them that will never ever see it, but I think there's enough people that could be, woken up or however you want to put it if it does affect them personally enough.
Yeah.
I'd like to think, but I don't know. I mean, I guess maybe we'll find out.
Do you buy the theory that there's this theory that there are the committed right wingers, right? They hate liberals actively. They hate liberal culture. They have all those sort of various views. But then the reason Trump won was just a lot of people were like, eggs are too expensive. Mm-hmm. And I remember 2019,
mm-hmm.
and 2019 was pretty good for me. And this guy's more famous than this Kamala lady who I've never really heard of, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is, I think, a big part of the effect too. And so that maybe that's sort of like a broad but shallow support that the economics could change. Is that?
Yeah, no, I do. I mean, I buy that because there was a few things that I feel like give some credence to that idea, which was like at the time we weren't the only place that had an election, and like a lot of the incumbent regimes, really got wrecked in the elections after COVID and the inflation that they had everywhere. So there was it was reactionary everywhere, but it didn't matter which side of the political spectrum that regime in that given place was on. They had to pay for it, had to pay for, the economic pain after COVID, even though if it wasn't their fault, it didn't matter. So it felt like it was a global trend, first of all. And secondly, I mean, maybe this was apocryphal, but I remember hearing that after, on election day in November, one of the top Google searches in America was, did Joe Biden drop out? Or whatever,
or who's running for president?
Yeah, right, yeah. And so it's that too. It's to me, it's crazy that there are people that miss all that, or that are just, they don't even really care at all, but it's just nothing but kitchen table stuff. If eggs are too expensive, who's in charge? Well, fuck that guy then. And it's just as simple as that, and that they don't even know who's running. And it's crazy to me that those people are out there, but I guess apparently they are. And I do think that if that just holds true, that's what I'm saying. If it gets bad and we've gotten even more reactionary. Yeah. So it's if it continues in this direction, it'll probably, there'll be a big retribution for in the other, it'll swing hard back in the other direction, and then when the liberals, if they get back in, they come in and they fail to adequately clean everything up in, a 4-year time period, then it'll swing back the other way.
It seems like we're doomed to go back and forth.
Right.
I can't imagine
know how to fix that either.
It's hard to imagine there being anything other than a Republican washout pretty soon, which is, I'm not making predictions, but the tariff stuff is going to affect people before the next midterm election.
Right, yeah.
Folks, we've been talking on this show lately about political polarization in America, how we're stuck in our bubbles, and about how it's so hard to know whether the information that you're getting is accurate and unbiased. Well, to help me wade my way through the thicket of American political media, that is why I am so happy to use Ground News. Ground News is this awesome aggregator. They collect all the news for you, but they give every single source a bias and factuality rating. So if the source you're reading is from the center right, the far left. That doesn't mean that what is in it is wrong. It just means you should know the perspective that they write from. Same goes for their factuality rating, where they give you an actual rating of how factual each source is, so you can avoid misinformation and know that you're getting the real deal. We use Ground News on this show in our research process. We find it super reliable. I think you're going to find it really useful as well. If you want to break out of your bubble and make sure you're getting the real story. So if that sounds good and you want to give it a try for yourself, well, guess what? You can get 40% off a membership if you go to groundnews.com/factually. Once again, that's 40% off if you go to groundnews.com/factually. But also, it really seems like what happened in my mind is, first time Trump ran and won, it was a fluke. And the traditional Republican, the establishment was all right, we'll just let him be president and we'll sort of hold a lid on everything.
Yeah.
But the second time he ran, the really far right-wing elements, like the Heritage Foundation people who've been making plans for 40 years to reshape the country, were this is our guy. If he wins, we can do all this shit. And then that's what they're doing. They're they want to destroy the federal government. Right. That has always been their plan. Mm-hmm. And so now they're just, we'll fire everybody. We'll ignore the laws on the books about it. We'll just wreck house. They are doing their wish list to a degree that no political movement has ever done their wish list before. And I just don't think there's enough people in America who actually like that wish list.
I agree with you completely. Yeah. It's when you manage to remove the party affiliations to certain ideas, pretty much every poll ever shows that a lot of progressive policies themselves are popular with people, or that a lot of those hardcore policies like that, like Project 2025 stuff, are not popular with people. But it gets mixed up in the whole identity politics. The people identify as the sports team element of who people vote for. And all
the
that.
Tribalism.
Yeah, tribalism, and but like you said, they haven't been able to, like you mentioned earlier, Trump's first term, and it was Mnuchin and whatever. And we found out in the January 6th committee, there was even inside the administration, there was team sane and team crazy or whatever. And there, but there were still sane people around.
Yeah.
And there were still the old political establishment type people, Republicans that were weren't going to let things go too far off the rails, but those people were like, sanity's not, that ain't what's up in the in Trump world, and they're disloyal and they push back and all that. So this time around, it's like fanatics and true believers and people that are really there to like do something, know it, and they're like
and idiots as a result. Like if you're optimizing for who's a fanatic and a true believer, you're not getting the smartest people. You're getting like these drunks who are like on a signal chat, right?
Yeah,
like
well, it's
just
like
doing
that.
stupid
Apparently,
shit.
the chief, like the mastermind of the whole tariff strategy is the Navarro guy, right?
Yeah,
he based all of his whole philosophy on a persona that he made up for himself, and like he made an anagram of his own name. His name's Navarro, so it's like Ron Vano or something like that. He like sourced all this. You don't know what I'm talking about?
I didn't hear about this.
Yeah, he like in his like writings for like justifying these tariffs, he sources it to an expert named like it's something like I can't do the letters.
Oh my
in my
God.
head, and it's
he's like written pseudonym articles that he's citing.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Jesus Christ.
It very much seems that way anyway, because that guy who's like behind all that doesn't seem to exist. And again, it's a perfect, anagram for his name. So it's like, it's just silly shit. That's the thing too, is it's like everything is so like bad and catastrophic, but so dumb and silly and absurd at the same time. And it's a real bad combination.
You should do all these big economic changes. There's this great economist named Eve Pro-Under. It's the opposite of my name, coincidentally. But yeah, just like, listen, he's an eminent guy from Liechtenstein. Yeah,
right. No, and that's like literally happening. And it's, but yeah, right. So the first time around, because you didn't have that same element or that same drive and everything, a lot of their worst instincts were sort of not, brought to bear.
Yeah.
And they're really doing it this time. And those things we think are and will be bad.
Yeah.
Undeniably so. So how could there not be kind of a reaction to that from the American electorate, however goldfishy their memory might be or whatever?
Yeah.
So I don't know.
But by the same token, it's not like Democrat policies have been good for working class people. You talk a lot about class, right? Like how do you analyze what's happened in America class wise, like?
Oh, well, the Democrat, the big Democrat got, taken over by the like moderate neoliberal pro-business forces that kind of left regular people behind a long time ago. And there's like a progressive element, but they get shut down at every turn.
Yeah.
And I think that there needs to be we ain't even talked about them yet, but no, I'm not a fan generally. And I think there needs to be a leftist equivalent to like a Tea Party moment, like a paradigm shift or something.
Yeah.
That they had after, when the country elected a black guy in 2008 and the right was like, we got to change everything to, keep this shit from happening we got to get way crazier, way dumber. Right. And by God, they did it. We need to have like the progressive inverse version of that happen, where it's like, there needs to be a reckoning, I think, with the Democrats, with people that actually like will advocate for the interest of just regular people again, instead of just, obviously the same shit everybody says, because it's true, too much money in politics and Citizens United and all this, and people are bought and paid for, and they got everybody serving corporate interest and loves the banks on either side and all that, and the people that get left behind are just regular working class people, and that should be, it is the left, but it should be the Democratic Party should be taking up that, and again, they have some people who are actually in the party who do, but not enough, and those people have to fight internal civil wars with the old guard for no good fucking reason, and it needs to change.
Well, what's crazy is there's this idea on the left that like it sort of can't be done within the Democratic Party, right? Mm-hmm. Or that left policies will like never work, or they go too far, right? The leftists either say, "Oh, we can't make it happen in the Democratic Party." The moderate Democrats say, "Oh, Americans will never go for it," right? For progressive policies. And so just nobody ends up doing anything. When you look at what the right has done, the Republican Party was taken over from the inside by the most right-wing element of the party.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
The moderate Republicans are dead. They don't do shit. Mitch McConnell's disempowered. And like now they're doing the craziest shit. And so we should look at it as an opportunity. You can do anything in America.
No, that's exactly what I mean. When I say like our own version of that, that's what I mean. It's like that's one of the worst things that's ever happened in this country, in my opinion. But the inverse of that, the like leftist or more progressive version of that happening to the Democratic Party, I think is exactly what needs to happen. I don't know if it's going to or not, but that's what I think.
Yeah, when you look at the arguments that like moderate Democrats are like making against Bernie, people won't vote for this. like we can't actually do these things. Well, they ended up losing.
Yeah, right.
By trying to chart the safer path.
Exactly.
And Trump will end. They all thought Trump would lose because he's too crazy, and the guy has run the table.
Mm-hmm.
What would you like to see actually happen in terms of policy?
I think
Drop my pen. It's completely pointless.
things
buddy.
like universal health care, UBI, and raising the minimum wage and all these things that just help regular people, like economic stuff. Don't get me wrong. I'm not. Everyone should have equal rights too, and we can't like compromise on that. But I think that the driving force of it needs to be the more like fucking FDR New Deal type thing. Of like infrastructure, education, like I said, healthcare, just building for the future, putting people to work, paying people what they deserve, and taxing the fucking rich.
Yeah.
And the way that we need to, because it's like you can make multiple millions of dollars a year and then just tax over that. You know what I mean? You can make the threshold pretty high, plenty enough for anybody, or it should be, and then just tax the shit out of what's over that, and they'll still be rich as hell.
Yeah.
We can fix a lot of, so like that, someone who's willing to, take on billionaires, act like legitimately, and just get this country back to like just regular people.
The disheartening part is that Biden, for all of his faults, he had many, obviously, and the Democratic Party overall has many, but he was starting to do a couple of things that you said, right? Like when they came in, they were basically like, this is the new FDR. Like that was their aesthetic point. And they started doing some antitrust reform, started trying to like break up big companies, go after billionaires a little bit. Lena Khan was at the FTC, going after like stopping mergers and stuff like that. And that's all a little bit technocratic, but the billionaires like fought back, right? As soon as
of course,
bit,
I know,
we started pushing a little bit, they were like, oh, we all got to become Republicans and get Trump elected. It did not win him any points with working class people, despite him trying.
No, I know that part. Yes, that part's very frustrating because I thought the whole time, by the end, the like mental capacity things with Biden, I felt like were undeniable.
Beyond.
You know what I mean? Yeah,
and that killed everything.
Right, and that made it non-negotiable to me. But in terms of like things they accomplished, or and actually got done, it was maddening to me. Some of the discourse around the Biden administration all the time because it just wasn't fair. People just didn't give him any credit for any things they actually did accomplish, and that's a whole other aspect of like fucking propaganda and disinformation in the media and what that's become and where people get their information from and the bubbles people live in and that. So then there's that. There's like, I feel like that and all the money in politics, like those two things, I feel like may be the big, headliner items that are fucking this country up. Like the main things. And it's like, there's too many people making too much money off of how it all currently works I mean, sometimes I think it's going to take, something pretty extreme, depending on how bad it gets, something kind of Frenchy or Luigi-esque, but I don't know.
Well, one of the problems we have, though, is that like working class people do not support like leftist policies that are designed for working class people, right? I'm actually listening to this history of like the rise of the Third Reich right now. Just funny thing. I was like, I should maybe learn about like what happened in like the early rise of the Nazi Party.
Sure.
And like see exactly how that went down.
How you sleeping? How's it doing for your sleep cycle? Yeah.
It's honestly, it's more comforting than reading the news right now.
Okay.
Like shit makes a little bit more sense. One of the things that makes a little bit more sense in that story is that like the working class in Germany at the time, like a lot of them were communists, right? Or socialists, because like that was who, the leftists were espousing ideas that were specifically for the working class. And so like one of the things the Nazis tried to do was, we want to get that support. We want to take it away from the communists, right? But like if you look around America now, the people who are, the leftists most want to support actually support the other side to a crazy degree. And it's like, people call it disalignment, right? That like the people who the policies are supposed to help do not support the policies or do not support the people who are putting the policies forward. And I have no idea how to solve that.
I don't know how to solve it either. But I think it's like I said, I think it comes back to the propaganda and the media and all that and all the culture war shit.
Yeah.
They don't think about like, there are people who genuinely believe that like every liberal is like a pedophilic, blood drinker or whatever, like baby killing blood, like literally.
Yeah.
And I don't know what, I don't, again, outside of, there would have to be some kind of regulation that reins in, what, like disinformation, and again, I don't know how that's ever going to happen because it benefits too many people.
Well, we have a First Amendment, and like, do we want to live in a world with that kind of regulation? Like,
I know. So I know that I don't know how you actually fix that either. Outside, all like giving them enough rope to hang themselves, and that, like we were saying earlier, this is all real bad and stupid. I genuinely believe.
Yeah.
And so if they're headed down the track still, and if they keep doing it, hopefully people just won't be able to deny anymore. You know what I mean? However bad the propaganda is, they won't be able to deny, like, things are bad and this is clearly the reason why.
Yeah.
Outside of that, I don't know.
If the other side, I mean, one of the things that's pathetic about the Democrats is they're not able to say, this is bad, here's why, and here's what we should do instead, right? Like, there's a couple people who try, Bernie has tried, right? But like the mainstream of the party, like Schumer and whoever else is leading it, these people are the current DNC chair. They're just like, they cannot even enunciate what the fuck is happening.
Right. Yeah, no, I don't know. I mean, that's another one too. Just like I said, paradigm shift, new leadership, new approach, all of it.
Yeah.
You're right. It's like, it feels like they've been playing by a different set of rules the whole time.
Yeah.
Even though it should have been abundantly clear by now that all that is out the fucking window.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's completely whole new ball game, but there's still a lot of them, like Schumer and his ilk, are like still acting like things work the way that they always have in this country.
Yeah, because they're all 85 and that's what got them there. And what else would they think,
Yeah, right. Exactly.
I think that what we don't think about enough is, you said we need a new FDR, and that would be great. Except that what brought us FDR was the Great Depression.
Yeah, I know.
Like,
I'm sorry.
That was the result of the 19th century corruption regimes, which is like, that looks like what we have now. So maybe that's where we're headed.
I know, the Gilded Age, the robber barons and everything, wealth just running roughshod over the entire populace and no regular. Yeah, no, it's a startling parallel, but it's also like, I don't love the idea of that either, but I'm saying, like, I kind of think that just is happening.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I know it's like, to have Hoover to get to FDR and all that, but it's like, well, I think we're maybe there, like at the beginning of that process.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I mean when I say, like, if it gets bad enough, then maybe it'll swing, maybe we can finally course correct. That's kind of, I guess, a more diplomatic way of me trying to say basically that, is that's what it's going to take. And I don't want that either. Again, I got kids, but it's like, it doesn't really matter what I want at this point. It's kind of what I think.
It certainly seems like we could go in that direction with like suddenly 50% tariffs on everything, meaning every average things are going to get 50% more expensive, and the stock market crashing if that persists. Like, there's an entirely new economic reality that'll like reshape people's lives in ways that are unpredictable that they might not even be aware of. It's fucking crazy world we're entering.
Yeah, no, I know. Yeah, it's like, sure, you agree. I'm tired of living in interesting times. The ancient curse. Like, I like boring shit, man. Well, movies and stuff, not necessarily, but like I like my times to be boring.
That's why everybody's nostalgic for the 90s. The 90s really look like that was the peak of American civilization. And of course, that's because that's when I was in high school.
Me too. Yeah,
so,
I feel the same way.
But what was great about it? It was boring. There was not that much happening. Monica Lewinsky was the biggest thing that happened in the 90s. Yep. The president in a sex scandal, which is like, by comparison now, and like, what a nice little thing to gossip about.
Yeah, no, the president is an adjudicated rapist or whatever. He got reelected after that happened.
Yeah.
It's absolutely, that was a real, like, kind of a real turning point moment for me. For a lot of people was, during the first go round with Trump and that, like, the pussy tapes or whatever they got, like, that was like, it was still at a point for me, at least with our politics in this country, that when that first happened, I was like, okay, well,
I agree.
No one can survive. I know he's got different rules than everybody else, but not to that extent. And then when that didn't matter at that point, it was like, oh, okay, we're entering a whole new era.
Well, I had this idea in the back of my head that from growing up in the 90s that so much of America was still like small c socially conservative. Just like
prudish.
Prudish.
Yeah, right.
The same people who didn't like seeing Janet Jackson's boob on TV would object to the man saying pussy on tape.
Yes.
And just hearing that and go, oh, well, that's pretty crass. I don't like that. That's not what they say at church. So I'm not going to vote for him. And that was a big change, that like we don't give a shit about that anymore, that we're a much crasser, sort of ruder country than we were a couple of years ago. Was something that took me by surprise.
Yeah, no, I agree with you completely. I thought the same thing, but I think that specific, like you said, it's what that ain't how we talk at church. It's like, that's a whole other thing. Again, this is in a lot of ways has been kind of a long time coming for the American right, because that's also tied to like the successful campaign to just fundamentally align Republicans and Christianity or whatever, like because it didn't always used to be that way. That's a massive part of it all too. It's like it doesn't matter. Like he's their guy. It doesn't matter the reality of who he is or how he is or what he does. It's like he just is their guy. So he's like, a holy man or whatever. And Barack Obama was a secret Kenyan Muslim. Yeah. Or whatever.
I know you're not a Christian, but if I can speculate a little bit, is part of it that like, well, he's a sinner, right? Everybody sins. Of course he's a piece of shit. We're all pieces of shit, but we can all be in furtherance of God's plan. You know what I mean? Is it that accommodation?
I have never known these people to hold back from judging other pieces of shit, regardless of how big of a piece of shit they might be. That's kind of an underlying precept with at least the Christians that I grew up with. Everybody knows it. Like even other Christians all like acknowledge it. It's like there's jokes about it and shit. It's like, why do you always go fishing with at least two Baptists? Because if you go with just one, he'll drink all your beer, right?
If
shit like
two,
that,
they won't drink in front of each other. That's a great joke.
Yeah, there's tons of shit like that. So it's like, no, I don't think that you're taking an almost like too Christian viewpoint of like, oh, it's he's a sinner, he's a lost soul, he could still be saved or whatever. But I don't think it's. I think if he wasn't like their guy, their champion, their sports team that they're a part of, that they root for, I don't think they would hold back at all calling him a philandering piece of shit or whatever, but they just ignore it all and pretend it isn't there.
Yeah. Maybe, okay, let me speculate in a different direction, because a lot of Christians in America have a fundamentally apocalyptic worldview that like somebody needs to come along to sort of bring about the destruction of society in order to create the kingdom of God on earth.
Yeah.
Is it that?
Maybe. I mean, that's what I've been told by my Christian friends about, or like ex-Christian friends about, like, I guess a lot of the Israel stuff evidently is tied up in that for American Christians, because that's part of like the Bible and the prophecy or whatever, is like they literally want that conflict over there to elevate to the level of like bringing Jesus back and the book of Revelation in the end times. And so that's why they support Israel politically or something. So there's definitely an element of that, but I really do just think it's like it's like I said, it's just more of the tribalism than anything. It's like I said, you're a Christian, which you're a Christian and Republican, and those two are kind of one and the same. And so you just, you got your team, and he's like the coach or the quarterback or whatever of your team, and it doesn't matter. Unlike with sports, if the quarterback like sucks openly out loud, people are going to call for him to be replaced. But here, that it doesn't apply for whatever reason.
Yeah. What do you think about in terms of comedy, like being a liberal guy from your area? We've also seen like a huge rise in right-wing comedy in the last couple of years.
Absolutely.
Any thoughts on it?
Oh, I'm not gonna lie. I don't know about you, but I never really saw that coming. Really, I mean, like long enough, because I grew up a comedy nerd. Yeah, and always wanted to do a stand up, and I didn't start.
What did you love first?
My favorite.
Yeah, growing up.
I remember specifically like the moment because I grew up in my dad's video store. So I always wanted to do some kind of show business something. But with stand up specifically, it was Chris Rock's Bigger and Blacker. That's the special that has the stuff about dads. Like nobody, all he gets is the big piece of chicken. Nobody gives a fuck about dad. Everybody, because I said I was raised by a single dad. I just remember my dad loving that shit. It's funny. I mean, comics have a similar story of like seeing their dad crack up at something or whatever. But that's literally what it was. So that was the moment. So Chris Rock to this day, for sentimental reasons, and also, I mean, I just think he's great. Chris Rock is my all-time number one. He's my favorite guy. But I got into all, like I said, I loved Eddie Izzard, and I loved old Richard Pryor stuff, and I loved early Dave Chappelle, and loved all of it. And, right. So I always knew I wanted to do comedy, but I was in the middle of nowhere. And I get to Knoxville and I'm 24. And that's when I start in 2010. And like back then, as I sort of alluded to earlier, I would in Knoxville and in little bar shows and stuff right there, I'd make fun of the Bible and that type of stuff. And it was like that was like as far as you could push the envelope. But like it was very ballsy in that time and place, right? To a lot of comics who also were there, be like, I can't believe the shit you get away with, like that type of thing. And I always thought it was because I sounded like them. You know what I mean? Like even then, it was kind of a Trojan horse type deal. But either way, it was like I said, ballsy and edgy. And now in comedy in general, to a lot of comedy fans, it's like whatever. It's woke pandering, liberal bullshit, and like the real truth tellers now, the ones that push the envelope and stuff now are the guys who are on the right because, they say retard and stuff like that. So,
literally, they're just telling racist jokes from the 50s, like street jokes.
Yeah.
Black people eat watermelon, and like that's being a bold truth teller now.
We were talking about how the pendulum always swings or whatever, and everything's reactionary in this country. So I guess that's part of it, but I didn't really foresee that until it was already kind of on us, but it's wild to me, that it's so, because used to like people, even when I like first started, even like in 2016 when I first went viral, people would ask, they would be like, it was, how like for a long time it was like, are women funny? Which is hilarious. That was the thing. Well, there also was a thing, like I would get asked like, are there any good conservative comedians? You know what I mean? Like that used to be, they were like, are there any funny conservative people? They don't have any. And now it's like the biggest ticket sellers and biggest names in all of comedy are on that side. And I never would have.
The biggest ticket sellers in comedy literally hosted Donald Trump on all their podcasts last year.
Yeah, right.
And they're overtly conservatives. I mean, they're like, they speak at his rallies. They went to the inauguration. But and I remember in like 2014, 2015, hearing liberals say, there's no such thing as conservative comedy. Fundamentally, it was the same as how Democrats used to say that there'll never be another Republican president because demographics are changing. You also had people say, oh yeah, comedy just is liberal. And I always thought that was suspect because like everybody likes to laugh and everybody, all you got to do is figure out what people think and then say something that surprises them, but also confirms what they believe and you can make them laugh. And like, of course, those folks want to laugh, but it has been crazy to see it become like the one of the biggest parts of comedy right now.
Yeah, no. I mean, I think it seems like it is the biggest part of comedy to me. Yeah, I mean, I'm with of course that like, but I think the argument of like, because I used to think too, is like any comedians generally are like they're skeptics, they are shit talkers. Do you know what I mean? Meaning like they question things, they question authority, they make fun of things, they like pull shit apart and try to expose it, and I used to kind of think that those general traits were kind of antithetical to being at least like a hardcore conservative. But then, like I said, reactionary the sense was that the left pushed so far that like, you can't say anything anymore. You can't joke about anything. Right. Yeah. And then I feel like that was a real big impetus for the push in that direction for right-wing comedy in particular, was the whole like, who are you to tell me that I can't joke about something? But again, they're like screaming about that on like $20 million Netflix specials and the biggest podcasts on earth. So don't get me wrong. Yeah. But I'm just saying that like feeling, I think, was a big.
It's crazy how that feeling took over when, now if you say the wrong thing, some guys come and put you in a van and like take you to El Salvador.
That's always been true too. Yes. It's like they're the ones that really cancel people. I saw you got, is that the book from Cliff Nestroff that talks about like how
on the shelf behind you?
People are aware. It's like, like Lenny Bruce went to jail and shit. Like people, you couldn't talk, you couldn't like say the word pregnant in like a comedy routine or whatever. And that was always the equivalent of the right, like the conservatives, or the equivalent of at that time, who were policing what could and could not be said. And still to this day, they're the ones who really cancel everybody. And that was true the whole time. They canceled Bud Light and Disney and all them all the time. They got something new to be pissed off about. Like,
I mean, you don't need to say Republicans. It's social conservatives, who are in positions of power, legislate morality and what people can say.
Exactly.
And like, social progressives or social liberals, whatever you want to say, don't do that. They say, we'd prefer you not say that thing, or they might show up with signs or something like that and protest you if you're really, you're really far beyond. But like no one's passing laws about it, you know? In most cases, what people are complaining about is just college students didn't laugh at my joke. College students who have never been to a comedy show in most cases and are like nervous because they're around their friends. You know?
I guess for big name comics, I guess it was different and their expectations were off because of that. But I've always gotten the impression it's like every comic I know knows that college shows, as a general rule, are at least like hit or miss. You know what I mean? Like, and oftentimes
you can't make jokes about dating because they don't do it.
Well, they just don't. They're like you said, they haven't been to a comedy show or they're too cool for it or whatever. Sometimes, people don't even show up, and when they do, they're just like, they just don't give a shit about it. So
they're in their pajamas. They're taking a break from studying.
Right, exactly. So it's like it's not necessarily tied to, oh, they're too uptight, politically to laugh at this. It's just like they wouldn't. Some of them just wouldn't be laughing at anything. They got like misinterpreted or whatever. I don't know.
Man, that just put me in my memory once of like almost 10 years ago. I did a show at a girls' college, like I forget which one, but it was like a historically, all female university, and that was like one of the more intense shows I've ever done. To be laughed at exclusively by an audience of women in my mid-20s was like kind of rocked me to my core.
Really?
And also, just like growing up, the judgment of women always meant a lot to me. You know what I mean? I was like, oh, I hope that the women around me think well of me. And then also having to tailor my material specifically to that particular circumstance. I'm going to do comedy for exclusively an audience of 19-year-old women is like different than a general audience.
Absolutely.
And like, I think a lot of comics just are not able to make that adjustment, of like, here are the people in front of me. But do you think that, I guess let's wrap it up with this general topic. Like, I think too much is made often of like whether comedy is politically powerful. Like to me, it's like an expression of what's happening politically, or like maybe we're able to detect something about what's going on politically because we're going and like trying to make people laugh in person. But at the same time, like conservative comedy or right wing, what this trend that we're talking about, it has been like part of the politics the last 2 years in like a really definite way.
That's true.
So like, how do you think about it?
I definitely agreed with you when people would ask me, I would be like, well, I don't know that I buy that political comedy or comedy in general or satire like really changes much of anything or changes people's minds or whatnot. But I do still think it could be important because it like speaks to some important shit that's happening in the world. It gives people a way to think about it, a way to laugh at something that might be hard to laugh about so it can still be cathartic or helpful or whatever. So it's still good and important. I don't know that it's really like making a difference. Right?
I know. Sometimes you get some liberal comes up to you and they're like, thank you. Yeah. Thank you for making a difference. You're like, you got to chill out.
Right. Yes. No, I'm a giggle monger at best, but yeah. No, so that was always my position. But you're right though about this new like right wing version of it. It's because I've got two sons. My sons are middle school aged, and they're good boys. They're not into any of that type of shit yet, but I think about it all the time. And when I say that type of shit, I mean like alpha male. Like I live in fear of Andrew Tate, man. Like, or them finding him or whatever and liking it or any of that stuff. And I don't see them being like that, but I think about this shit a lot because I have sons. And that I do think there was something to that whole thing of like finding a way to talk to or reach or appeal to like young guys. Yeah. And because they vote too and they could be a powerful, demographic, and they pretty much exclusively are, owned by and driven by these right-wing forces right now lately, like in the media and stuff or in comedy and in podcasting and all that. Yeah. So like, I don't know what the answer to it is, but I do think about it a lot because it's like personal to me, I hear all this talk about what young guys are like now. And also it's like, I'm a man, I was a young guy, I have sons. It's like, I do think there's also some of that, like, and I'm a white man with white sons, and the whole like, the idea that like young white dudes get the impression, however fairly, from society or the media or whatever frequently that they, suck or that they should just shut the fuck up or that nobody wants to hear from them or that they shouldn't be doing anything. I don't think that's completely unfounded, and I can see why they would, some of them would, push back against that and be like, well, fuck you then.
Yeah.
And so I think that, people need to be more honest about that and try to figure out a way to, try to offer some kind of other option, counter programming.
Young white men, come in here. The water's fine.
That's what I'm saying.
Go to a.
I literally
Trae
been
Crowder
thinking about
show.
trying to fucking start Twitch streaming, dude. Like, something because that's how much I've been thinking about this. But it's like, but also I know enough because I have sons. Like I'm a dad of the guys. He's like, I know that I'm not cool. When he's like, it's like cool. That's also not a raging right winger or whatever. So, but I don't know.
Oh, dads are cool. Plenty of those guys are dads.
Yeah.
They're solid family values, but also
that is true. Yeah, I know, but I do think a lot of it's like it was kind of Trojan horsed. I feel like, meaning like a lot of that stuff didn't start out as like overtly political, or that wasn't the main appeal, and it's stuff that young guys like, and so they start fucking with it, and then that gets like filtered in.
Yeah, throughout, it's like you're just listening to your favorite workout podcast or comedy podcast, and the people on and go, Joe Biden, and then it's just ambiently around, and that's just like what your bros think, what your pals think.
Yes.
In the same way that liberals operate, right? Like I listen to a podcast and there's this like ambient, here's all the stuff that we agree on that you get sucked
just
into.
Assumed,
The people I like all sort of think this way, so I'll think that way too. It doesn't need to be political content. In that way, like I think that literally political comedy is often not the most important thing. It's like just what your favorite gamer or comic who talks about completely different things thinks.
I fully agree. That's another thing I've been thinking a lot about lately. Yeah, that's sort of like, I guess, I don't know if Trojan horse is the right way to put it, because I don't know how like deliberate it is for everybody that's how it works. But I do think that you're right. That's like that is more important. It's just having a more reasonable sort of voice behind some of these things that, draws these people in to begin with.
You just got to start your hit podcast about the Tennessee Volunteers and, then occasionally drop a little politics in it or whatever your interest is.
Yeah, no, I know. Been thinking about it. Maybe not that specifically. I don't know. I do love sports shit, but I think that type of thing is what is needed.
Yeah.
I'm saying.
Are you working on it? Are you building towards anything bigger now than what you're currently doing? Or like, what are your?
I don't know.
Aspirations?
I'm mulling all this out. My general. I also want to like the traditional Hollywood stuff. I also want to do. You had a TV show that was great and that people loved. So
Thank you. They don't make those anymore. They don't make TV shows anymore.
I know it's good for me, but yeah, like I write scripts and pitch shows and stuff like that too.
Yeah.
But I also am thinking about sort of next steps or whatever for just my own thing, because like most of us now, my whole career is just it's me and my following. You know what I mean? It's not the Hollywood apparatus or anything. So I'm trying to think of what the next step in that's going to be, and I haven't figured it out yet. But I am.
The great thing about that is that, like, when you build something here, podcast, live touring, what we do, it's like no one can ever take it away from you, right? You can,
exactly.
It can't be canceled,
right?
You don't have to make an executive happy every year to keep it going. But then you miss the sort of like infrastructure, like the super suit of the media, of being able to build something bigger, right? That maybe goes further. That's like the constant war I have too. Is like, do I put more time into something that isn't a safe bet? Like, to pitch something where like maybe I waste my time, or do I keep building like the thing that I have that is, giving me a stable life currently, but is not going to have that chance of being like another lottery ticket or another like big project that would be fun to do.
Right. Yeah, that is the question. This also reminds me, I should have said at some point, because I haven't. I have a YouTube special out now called Trash Daddy.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah. The second one, it just came out a couple weeks ago. So check that out. I'm also always on tour, TraeCrowder.com. So.
Where are you headed soon?
Some of the same places you are. And I don't know when does it come out, like within a week or two or what? Or anyway,
it's going to come out in 2 days.
Oregon, Eugene and Portland and Houston, Texas, and then Seattle and Vegas, and then La Jolla, and on from there.
Oh yeah, man. Where do people get tickets?
TraeCrowder.com. TRAE Crowder.com.
And the new special Trash Daddy. Trae, thank you so much for being here, man. It's been awesome talking to you.
Thank you, buddy. It was a good time.
Well, thank you once again to Trae for coming on the show. You heard his tour dates. Mine are April 16th through 17th. I'll be in Vancouver, Canada. April 18th through 19th. I'll be in Eugene, Oregon. After that, Charleston, South Carolina, Tulsa, Oklahoma, whole bunch of other cities. Head to adamconover.net for those tickets. And if you want to support the show directly, head to patreon.com/AdamConover. Of course, $5 a month gets you every episode of the show ad-free. For $15 a month, I will read your name in the credits of the podcast. It's been a little while since I recorded one, so we got some new people to read off. We got Anthony and Janet Barclay. Thank you very much. We got David Sears, VG, Christian Brower, Tank Guy, Damian Frank, Matthew, Robert Miller, Griffin Myers, Oh No Not Again, Sam Biggins, Taylor Kneffick, BK, Ryan Copesel Roth, Robin Ward, Alex Womack, Grant King, and 90 Miles from Needles. If you'd like me to read your name on the show or put it in the credits of every single one of my monologues, head to patreon.com/AdamConover and to adamconover.net for tickets and tour dates. I'd like to thank my producers, Sam Rodman and Tony Wilson, everybody here at HeadGum for making the show possible. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time on Factually.
That was a HeadGum podcast.